Good morning, ma'am. If you can state your name for the record.
Hi. My name is Allison Fairweather.
Hi, Ms. Fairweather.
Hi.
Go ahead.
I'm Mike's daughter.
Okay.
I have some words prepared. But I want to say to you, Mom, and you, sister, and you just... I thank you for your condolences, and I offer you my condolences too.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's not okay, Justin, but I don't hate you. I don't hate you. I'm working through emotions, and you're taking responsibility, and I'm happy you pled guilty, and I'm happy I didn't have to hear your 911 call and your confession, because I think I would have fixated on that for a very long time, and it would have been extremely difficult. I do want to read what I wrote. I think it's a little bit more composed than how I'm actually feeling. But I'm happy you stood up, and I'm happy you said something. So, my name is Allison. I'm Mike Pratt's daughter. And I don't know the circumstances of your home life growing up, but I want to tell you a little bit about mine, and I want to tell you a little bit about my dad, Mike. My parents divorced when I was very little, and I never remember a time living with my dad. But just because we didn't live under the same roof doesn't mean he wasn't in my life, because he always was. I, as a little girl, would spend weekends with him. He would take me to the driving range and the putting green, and we'd play games. My dad loved cards. He loved the board game Risk. We'd go to the movies, and I have many wonderful memories of going to the drive-in during warm Michigan summers. It was a treat. We'd go to my grandma's house, we'd visit his sisters, and my dad was always affectionate. Always. He always told me he loved me. He always hugged me. And my entire family did the same. I grew up surrounded by love and was completely supported my whole life long. Now, when I was a teenager, my dad moved from Michigan down here to Florida, so it was more difficult to see one another, but we kept in touch with phone calls, and we would visit together once or twice a year in person. When I got married, both my mom and dad walked me down the aisle to greet the love of my life. When I was the age you were when you took my dad's life, I was newlywed and living on an Air Force base in Mississippi. And when my dad came to visit me, he couldn't get over the fact of the housing that I was living in compared with the barracks he had been in, 30 years previously. He also got a kick out of ribbing my husband for playing it safe and flying the military planes when he had been jumping out of them. My dad loved to tell his stories of being in the Army. By the time I was the age you are now, cell phones were readily available, and this coincides with my dad's fondness of leaving voicemails. Rarely did my dad call without leaving me a message, and every message ended the same way, either, "All right, Dad loves you, bye," or simply, "Love you, goodbye." 3 years from now, when you're 27 years old, you'll have spent nearly 20% of your life behind bars. When I was 27, I became a mother, and the love I thought I'd previously known multiplied exponentially, and I now have 3 amazing teenage sons who are growing into respectable young men. My dad would have been so unbelievably proud to see his grandson Will make Eagle Scout just a few weeks ago, and he would have been cheering from the sidelines watching Brendan and Tyler play high school lacrosse. Now, while he's not here now, my boys did get to make a lot of wonderful core memories with their dad. One time when my husband was unexpectedly deployed and wasn't able to make a planned vacation with us to Universal Studios, my dad joined us instead. He rode every ride during the day and took my sons to the pool every night. In October of 2017, we took a family trip to Disney and invited my dad to join. And again, he rode every ride, walked miles upon miles, and never complained, which was pretty good for a guy in his 70s. If you make it to 70, Justin, you'll have spent 50 years in prison. Well, I talked to my dad on the phone several times a week. The last time I saw him was over Christmas of 2019, and in hindsight, I am so very thankful for that time together, considering what you did just less than 2 weeks later. He flew from Tampa to my house in Maryland and spent about a week with us. We had a great time. We went to Cirque du Soleil, we had a great dinner, played games, and my sons got lots of laughs watching my dad play with the VR headset. That Christmas, my dad gave my kids an axe so that they could chop firewood. And during his week at our house, my boys and their grandfather built a huge fire shed and stacked it full of wood. And they spent hours outside together. My boys loved it, my dad loved it, and I loved watching them. And now for the date that we're all here, January 9th. January 9th happens to be my mom's birthday. And while I try to remember all of the happy birthdays I spent with my mom, that day can sometimes be glum for me since she passed several years ago. And now it is absolutely my most dreaded day on the calendar. On the evening of January 9th, 2020, I was at practice with one of my kids when the local sheriff's department knocked on my door. When my son answered, they asked for me to please call them when I got home. And when I finally got in touch with Pasco County law enforcement and was told the circumstances of my dad's death, the shock and pain was inconceivable. I know I made phone calls to my brother and my aunts to pass along the devastating news, but I don't remember the conversations. What I do vividly remember is the next day watching the Pasco County Sheriff's press briefing where he called you pure evil. I remember he said during your confession that you saw the look of fear in my dad's eyes before you mercilessly murdered him. That's the last thing I remember because when I heard it, I shut down. I had tunnel vision and I fell to my knees. And when my husband tried to help me up, I couldn't move and began to heave. I couldn't, and I still don't understand how or why you could do such a thing. And these effects didn't last just one day. They've continued on and on. You know, you never stop to consider how often somebody is struck by a vehicle in a movie or a TV show. It happens remarkably frequently. And each time I see it, because it happens so unexpectedly, my stomach drops, my eyes fill with tears, and I'm reminded of the horrible way my dad's life was ended. So I've struggled with what to say here today and how to address you. I'm very compassionate by nature. And your actions have placed me in an inexplicable position because my heart and my head are fighting each other. When I saw your mugshot, I was so shocked. I was expecting to see a crazy-eyed junkie or a scary-looking, tattooed, hard-faced criminal, but that wasn't the face I saw. I saw a lost soul. I saw photos of you as a little boy and as a teenager in what looked to be a JROTC uniform. And I see someone who looked unsure of himself. And then when I saw you in court just the other day, my heart sank. Because I'm still having a hard time reconciling your demeanor, your outward demeanor, with your murderous actions and the callous words you used in your 911 call and confession. The way you carry yourself and speak makes me pity you, and I imagine you're going to have a difficult time in prison. Now, my phone had over 100 unheard messages as of last night. I have a horrible habit of not listening to voicemails. But last night, sitting in the hotel room with my brother and trying to gather my thoughts here for today, I decided to finally listen to the ones from my dad. Hearing his voice last night brought out a big wave of emotion. There were some smiles, but mostly tears, because I loved him and I miss him so much. he should still be here, safely walking this earth. And if I'm able to judge, if it's okay with you, I have a couple of quick voicemails. There's 3, they're less than 40 seconds. Can I play them? Just so you can hear his voice, just like I heard your voice, and perhaps that might stick with you. So there's 3. The first one was the typical one I probably had hundreds, if not 1,000 times over the last 20 years. Just the basic, hey, I'm thinking of you, I love you. And the second one is from 2018, when my dad decided for some reason he wanted to be an Uber driver. And the third is the last message he left me, which was on New Year's Day of 2020.
Hi, just calling to say hello and see how you're doing and if you're working today. Love you, bye. Hey, Allison, I was just calling to tell you my first rider gave me a $20 tip today. So I was sharing my joy with you. Love you, bye. Hey, Happy New Year out there to everybody in Owens, Maryland. Love you all, Grandpa.